Number 1. Marfa, Texas. Out in the high desert of West Texas, roughly 200 miles from the nearest major city, sits a town that by all reasonable metrics should have disappeared decades ago. Marfa has a population hovering around 1,700 people, a single stoplight, and an inexplicable art scene that somehow hasn't managed to turn the place into a pretentious nightmare. The town exists in that peculiar sweet spot where genuine creative energy meets geographic isolation, and the result is something authentically strange. Daily life in Marfa moves at a pace that would drive most Americans to mild insanity. You wake up, you drink coffee, you look at the mountains, you maybe drive to the one grocery store that stocks an oddly sophisticated selection of cheeses alongside standard ranch supplies. The Marfa Mystery Lights viewing area sits just outside town, where locals and tourists alike gather at dusk to watch unexplained orbs float across the desert horizon. Nobody has adequately explained these lights, and frankly, nobody in Marfa seems particularly concerned about finding an explanation. What keeps Marfa grounded despite its art world reputation is the sheer impracticality of visiting or living there. The nearest commercial airport requires a 3-hour drive. Amazon deliveries take roughly the same amount of time to arrive as packages sent via Pony Express in 1860. The summer heat reaches temperatures that would discourage Satan himself from purchasing property. These inconveniences function as a natural filter, weeding out anyone who isn't genuinely committed to being there. The people who thrive in Marfa tend to be artists, writers, ranchers, and remote workers who genuinely don't mind seeing the same 12 faces at the coffee shop every morning for the rest of their natural lives. There's a certain type of person who finds deep comfort in predictable solitude, and Marfa rewards that disposition handsomely. Those who would struggle include anyone requiring regular access to specialists, diverse dining options, or the simple pleasure of running an errand without planning it like a military operation. If you need a target run to maintain your emotional equilibrium, Marfa will break you within 6 weeks. The trade-off is genuine, quiet, and space to think thoughts that aren't immediately interrupted by notifications, traffic, or the general hum of modern American anxiety. Number 2. Northfield, Minnesota. Nestled along the Cannon River in southeastern Minnesota, Northfield maintains the rare distinction of being a college town that hasn't been entirely consumed by its institutions. Home to both Carleton College and St. Olaf College, this town of approximately 20,000 residents has somehow avoided the aggressive gentrification that typically accompanies academic prestige. The downtown district still features locally owned hardware stores, operating alongside bookshops, and the most exciting annual event involves reenacting a failed bank robbery by the Jesse James Gang in 1876. The rhythm of Northfield follows the academic calendar without being enslaved to it. When students leave for summer, the town doesn't collapse into economic despair. Local businesses have cultivated enough year-round residents to maintain stability, and the farmers market continues operating regardless of whether 18-year-olds are currently debating philosophy in nearby dormitories. This balance required decades of intentional decisions by town leadership who recognized that becoming entirely dependent on tuition dollars would eventually hollow out community identity. Architecture in Northfield reflects a commitment to preservation that borders on stubbornness. The downtown buildings maintain their 19th-century facades not because some developer realized vintage aesthetics attract Instagram tourists, but because residents genuinely believe old buildings deserve to keep standing. The Archer House, a historic hotel, still operates with creaky floors and rooms that lack the sterile uniformity of chain accommodations. These choices attract visitors who appreciate character over convenience. Anyone seeking a community with genuine intellectual life but without the performative aspects of larger university towns would find Northfield refreshing. Conversations about literature and politics happen organically in coffee shops, not because participants are trying to signal their credentials to strangers. However, those requiring anonymity or diverse entertainment options will find Northfield suffocating. Everybody knows everybody, which sounds charming until you realize your questionable decisions at the local tavern will be discussed at the Lutheran Church potluck within 48 hours. The winters also deserve mention, as temperatures regularly drop to levels that make venturing outdoors feel like a personal insult from nature itself. Number 3. Bisbee, Arizona. Carved into the Mule Mountains near the Mexican border, Bisbee represents what happens when a mining town refuses to die gracefully and instead reinvents itself through sheer collective stubbornness. The copper mines closed decades ago, leaving behind a population of approximately 5,000 residents who transformed abandoned company housing into an eccentric artistic community that feels like it belongs in a different century and possibly a different dimension. The town cascades down steep hillsides connected by staircases rather than proper roads. Walking anywhere in Bisbee requires cardiovascular fitness and a fundamental acceptance that your calves will burn with the intensity of 1,000 suns. Houses stack upon houses in arrangements that would give building inspectors in other jurisdictions permanent anxiety disorders. The overall effect resembles a mining camp that got drunk on creativity and decided to experiment with architectural improvisation. Bisbee avoided selling its soul, primarily through demographics and geography. The young professionals and tech workers who transformed other quirky towns simply cannot function here. The infrastructure doesn't support their lifestyle requirements. Internet connectivity remains inconsistent. The nearest major hospital requires a 45-minute drive, and the housing stock consists largely of century-old structures with plumbing systems that operate more on optimism than engineering. These limitations attracted retirees, artists, and various individuals who had already exhausted their interest in conventional American life. The people who flourish in Bisbee include creative types seeking cheap rent and inspiration, retirees escaping the sameness of Sunbelt developments, and anyone whose definition of success doesn't require reliable package delivery or proximity to a Whole Foods. The annual events lean toward the peculiar, including a poetry reading festival and celebrations of the town's haunted history that tourists find charmingly authentic rather than commercially manufactured. Those who would despair in Bisbee include anyone with mobility limitations, given the staircase-dependent geography, along with parents seeking quality schools or young professionals building conventional careers. The town offers beauty and community at the cost of practicality, and that equation simply doesn't work for everyone. Number 4. Sitka, Alaska. Accessible only by air or sea, Sitka occupies a position on Baranof Island that would seem inconvenient if convenience ranked among the priorities of its roughly 8,500 residents. This former Russian colonial capital maintains a physical isolation that has functioned as a protective barrier against the forces that homogenize most American towns. You cannot drive to Sitka. You cannot stumble upon it accidentally. Everyone who arrives has made a deliberate choice, and that intentionality shapes the community character. Daily existence in Sitka revolves around the natural world in ways that feel almost anachronistic compared to mainland American life. Residents genuinely understand tides, weather patterns, and seasonal fishing runs because these forces directly impact their ability to eat, travel, and maintain heating oil supplies. The grocery store receives shipments by barge, which means when weather delays occur, the produce section reflects the consequences. This relationship with nature isn't performative environmentalism but practical necessity. The town maintained its character through genuine obstacles to development. Building anything in Sitka requires transporting materials by sea, navigating complex land ownership arrangements with the Tlingit people whose ancestral territory this remains, and accepting that the economics rarely make sense by conventional developer calculations. These barriers discouraged the strip mall construction and franchise proliferation that standardized most American communities during the late 20th century. Those who thrive in Sitka typically include commercial fishermen, healthcare workers serving the regional population, educators, and individuals with remote work arrangements who don't require in-person collaboration. The community supports a performing arts center, decent schools, and enough civic infrastructure that daily life doesn't feel like wilderness survival. You can attend a lecture on Southeast Alaskan ecology, then purchase quality coffee, then watch humpback whales from the harbor, all within the same afternoon. However, anyone requiring regular access to specialists, diverse shopping options, or the ability to spontaneously drive somewhere new would find Sitka claustrophobic. The island geography means your world becomes quite small quite quickly, and some people discover they need more horizon than an island can provide. Number 5. Paducah, Kentucky. Sitting at the confluence of the Tennessee and Ohio rivers, Paducah represents an increasingly rare species in American municipal life. A small city that acknowledges its limitations and builds upon its genuine strengths rather than pretending to be something it isn't. With roughly 27,000 residents, Paducah offers urban amenities at a scale that remains comprehensible, wrapped in a regional culture that hasn't been sanded down for mass consumption. The Artist Relocation Program, launched in 2000, represents Paducah's most famous initiative, offering incentives for artists to purchase and renovate historic properties in the Lower Town District. What distinguishes this program from similar efforts elsewhere is that it actually worked without destroying what it was trying to save. The artists who relocated weren't displaced a decade later by developers capitalizing on the improved neighborhood desirability. Policies were implemented to protect the investment these pioneers had made, demonstrating that intentional planning can produce stable, creative communities rather than temporary gentrification phases. Daily life in Paducah feels unhurried without feeling stagnant. The downtown district maintains locally owned restaurants, a quality bookstore, and enough cultural programming to prevent intellectual atrophy. The National Quilt Museum attracts a steady stream of visitors without transforming the town into a tourist trap. Residents can access reasonable healthcare, decent schools, and employment in manufacturing, healthcare, and education sectors that provide middle-class stability. Paducah appeals to artists seeking affordable studio space, retirees wanting cultural amenities without big city complications, and families who prioritize community connection over proximity to major airports. The cost of living remains genuinely low, which increasingly represents a form of freedom that many Americans can no longer access. Those who would struggle include anyone requiring diverse cuisine, vibrant nightlife, or the particular energy that only larger cities generate. Paducah is calm, friendly, and occasionally quite slow. For some people, this represents paradise. For others, it would feel like being trapped in an endless Sunday afternoon with no end in sight. Number 6. Port Townsend, Washington. Perched at the northeastern tip of the Olympic Peninsula, Port Townsend dodged the bullet of modernization largely through timing and geography. The town was built during the 1880s when residents expected it to become a major West Coast port, but the railroad never arrived, the population declined, and the ambitious Victorian architecture simply remained standing because nobody had money to replace it. By the time preservation became fashionable, Port Townsend already had a head start, measured in decades. The approximately 10,000 residents now inhabit one of the most complete Victorian seaports remaining in the United States, not because of some recent historic preservation movement but because the buildings never left. This authenticity distinguishes Port Townsend from the countless American towns that demolished their historic cores during the 20th century and now spend millions attempting to recreate what they destroyed. Life moves according to tides, weather, and the seasonal rhythms of the Olympic Peninsula. Wooden boat building remains an active trade, supported by a maritime heritage center that functions as both museum and working boatyard. Farmers markets feature actual farmers selling produce they actually grew, rather than resellers marking up items purchased from wholesale distributors. The local food economy maintains connections between producers and consumers that most Americans only experience at premium prices in upscale urban markets. Port Townsend attracts maritime enthusiasts, artists, writers, and retirees seeking natural beauty, combined with genuine community. The town supports local theater, quality restaurants, and enough bookstores to suggest residents prioritize reading over most other recreational activities. However, Port Townsend sits roughly 2 hours from Seattle, requires a ferry crossing for most connections to the broader world, and offers limited employment outside tourism, maritime trades, and remote work. The isolation that preserves its character also limits opportunity. Anyone building a conventional career or seeking the conveniences of metropolitan access would find the geography frustrating rather than charming. Number 7. Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Built into the Ozark Mountains during the 1880s as a health resort centered on natural springs, Eureka Springs evolved into something considerably stranger over the following century. The town of approximately 2,000 permanent residents now functions as an improbable combination of Victorian preservation, motorcycle rally destination, and quietly progressive enclave within one of America's most conservative regions. None of these elements should coexist peacefully, yet somehow they do. The geography prevented conventional development from the beginning. No street in Eureka Springs is straight, and many aren't level either. The town wraps around mountainsides in ways that made parking lots, strip malls, and subdivision construction either impossible or economically irrational. This geographical stubbornness forced the town to work with its existing architecture rather than demolishing everything for modernization. The result is a walkable downtown district where every building has character, because building without character wasn't physically possible. Daily life in Eureka Springs moves slowly, shaped by tourism seasons, and the artistic community that settled here decades ago. Galleries showcase work by local artists, restaurants source ingredients from Ozark farms, and the overall atmosphere suggests a town that decided at some point to embrace its weirdness rather than suppress it. Underground cave tours, paranormal investigation events, and folk music festivals coexist with motorcycle rallies and country music shows in arrangements that shouldn't work but somehow do. The town appeals to artists, LGBTQ individuals seeking accepting communities in an unexpected region, retirees valuing natural beauty, and tourists seeking alternatives to manufactured theme park experiences. The genuine strangeness attracts people who've grown tired of the polished sameness that characterizes most American destinations. Those who would struggle include anyone requiring level terrain for mobility purposes, parents seeking strong public schools, or professionals needing career advancement opportunities. Eureka Springs trades conventional practicality for unconventional charm, and that exchange rate doesn't work for everyone. Number 8. Mineral Point, Wisconsin. Wisconsin's third oldest city, Mineral Point was built by Cornish miners during the 1830s and maintained its architectural character through a combination of poverty, stubbornness, and eventual recognition that old stone buildings deserve preservation. The approximately 2,500 residents occupy a town that looks remarkably similar to how it appeared 150 years ago, not through expensive restoration projects but through continuous occupation of structures too well built to easily demolish. The Cornish influence extends beyond architecture into culinary traditions, most notably the pasty, a meat-filled pastry that sustained miners during long underground shifts, and now sustains tourists seeking authentic regional food experiences. Local restaurants serve pasties prepared according to recipes passed down through generations, alongside other dishes that reflect genuine heritage rather than manufactured nostalgia. Daily life in Mineral Point feels distinctly Midwestern in its rhythms and values. Neighbors still help neighbors, businesses close for funerals. The Lutheran Church remains central to community life for those who participate, while maintaining genuine tolerance for those who don't. This combination of tradition and acceptance reflects the best possibilities of small-town American life without the insularity that often accompanies it. The town attracts artists drawn to affordable studio spaces in historic buildings, retirees seeking communities with genuine character, and families who prioritize quiet stability over exciting growth. The cost of living remains remarkably low, the crime rate is essentially non-existent, and the schools provide solid education without the competitive intensity that makes suburban parenting feel like warfare. However, Mineral Point offers limited employment outside small business ownership, healthcare, and education. Young people typically leave for opportunities elsewhere, returning only after they've built careers that can function remotely or after retirement. The town also sits firmly in Wisconsin's climate reality, which means winters require genuine commitment and quality outerwear. Anyone expecting diverse entertainment, vibrant nightlife, or rapid personal growth would find Mineral Point offers none of these things, intentionally. Number 9. Silver City, New Mexico. Nestled in the Gila Mountains of southwestern New Mexico, Silver City represents what happens when a mining town survives its economic purpose and decides to become something different rather than disappearing entirely. The approximately 10,000 residents occupy a town that was once known for copper extraction and is now known for its art scene, outdoor recreation access, and remarkable affordability. Western New Mexico University anchors the local economy alongside a regional medical center, providing the employment stability that allows creative communities to flourish. Artists can actually afford studio space here, an increasingly rare reality in American towns that claim artistic identity. The downtown district maintains galleries, independent bookstores, and restaurants operated by actual chefs rather than franchise managers following corporate protocols. The geography surrounding Silver City includes the Gila Wilderness, the first designated wilderness area in the United States, offering hiking, hot springs, and backcountry experiences that haven't been packaged for mass consumption. You can still find solitude in the Gila, still encounter hot springs that require effort to reach, still experience nature without interpretation centers and gift shops. The town appeals to outdoor enthusiasts, artists seeking affordability, retirees escaping expensive coastal regions, and academics associated with the university. The combination of natural beauty, cultural activity, and low cost of living represents an increasingly rare package in contemporary America. Those who would struggle include anyone requiring immediate access to major airports, diverse shopping options, or specialized medical care beyond what the regional center provides. Silver City sits roughly 3 hours from major metropolitan areas in any direction. This isolation preserves character but limits options, a trade-off that every potential resident must honestly evaluate. Number 10. Bath, Maine. The city of ships. Bath has been building vessels along the Kennebec River since before American independence. The approximately 8,300 residents occupy a town where maritime industry remains the genuine economic foundation rather than a historical theme exploited for tourism. Bath Iron Works, a major naval shipyard, employs thousands and maintains the town's identity as a working community rather than a preserved museum piece. This industrial continuity distinguishes Bath from countless New England towns that lost their economic purpose and subsequently transformed into either bedroom communities for larger cities or tourist destinations trading on manufactured nostalgia. Bath still makes things. Workers still punch clocks at the shipyard. The economy still connects to physical production in ways that most American communities abandoned decades ago. Yet Bath also maintains genuine charm without manufacturing it. The downtown district features locally owned bookstores, quality restaurants, and architecture reflecting centuries of continuous occupation. Historic homes remain occupied by actual families rather than converted into vacation rentals. The working waterfront coexists with recreational uses in arrangements that respect the industrial heritage while accommodating contemporary desires for scenic access. Daily life follows rhythms shaped by shift work, tides, and Maine's extreme seasons. Winters require serious preparation and generate serious community bonding among those who endure them together. The surrounding coastline offers beauty without the development pressures that transformed more accessible Maine communities into seasonal playgrounds for wealthy visitors. Bath attracts those seeking authentic New England community, workers drawn to skilled trades, employment, retirees, valuing small-town character with reasonable access to Portland's amenities, and families prioritizing genuine community over manufactured subdivision experiences. Those requiring diverse employment options, warm climates, or urban cultural amenities would find Bath limiting. The town trades variety for authenticity, a calculation that works beautifully for some and terribly for others. These 10 towns share something increasingly rare in American life. They remained themselves while the country around them transformed into something more standardized, more convenient, and considerably less interesting. Each made different choices based on different circumstances, but they all resisted the pressure to become everywhere else. If you found value in exploring places that prioritize character over growth, consider subscribing. There are more stories worth telling about communities choosing different paths, and they're worth finding together.